Out of nowhere, the doors fly open and the paramedics come through with a patient on a stretcher. We realize this guy has a gate piercing his armpit. Trauma stories, let's go. So it was a cold day in Chicago. Now, I worked in an inner city hospital in Chicago, so I was used to seeing some pretty crazy stuff. But this time, we get the call, my pager goes off, and we all rush to the ER. So at this point, we're waiting for the ambulance to arrive. Out of nowhere, the doors fly open and the paramedics come through with a patient on a stretcher. The first thing we notice is this guy has a huge piece of metal underneath his arm. We were all like, what is that? So as we get him closer to the trauma bay, we realize this guy has a gate piercing his armpit. So we get the patient into the trauma bay, and the first thing we do is start to do our ABCs. Airway, breathing, circulation. Every time we admit a trauma patient, we do the same thing every single time. This allows us to know that the patient is breathing properly and that their heart is working normally and they're doing fine. So as we're checking this guy's ABCs, he's like laughing and cracking jokes like nothing happened to him. So here's the story. He was scaling a wall because he was supposedly trying to get into his apartment. So as some of you may know, in bigger cities like Chicago and New York, when they have these brownstones, they've got these metal gates that go around the side and they've got these prongs that protrude from the top of them. So as you can imagine, this guy is scaling the wall and he falls and impales himself on the fence. So we noticed the bar went through his armpit and it came out right behind his collarbone. This rod had to traverse many life-threatening structures that could have killed him instantly. So the subclavian vessels are literally like a water hose, and they carry blood to and from the heart to the limb, and that travels right behind the collarbone where this metal rod was. So why is that important? If you transect one of those vessels, you will bleed your entire 5-liter blood volume out in less than 1 minute. So upon our evaluation, this guy is wide awake, he's talking, he has a good pulse in his hand, so we're pretty sure that he did not bust one of those main vessels. All right, so once we get him stabilized, we're now gonna get chest x-rays to make sure that he didn't collapse his lung, otherwise called a pneumothorax. A pneumothorax occurs when you pierce the chest cavity and actually cause an injury to the lung itself, and it leaks air and causes collapse of the lung. So if he did have a collapsed lung, we would have to place a huge tube right through the rib cage into that space to evacuate all the air to reinflate the lung. So now we know he doesn't have a life-threatening vascular injury, and we know he doesn't have a life-threatening lung injury. So how do we prepare to take this thing out? So you may have heard this on medical shows or other doctors talk about it, but you never pull out an object that's stuck in your body. So I explain in this video why you should never pull out an impaled object. And your friend walks by and says, "Hey, buddy, let me pull that thing out." Guess what? You might die. Don't do that. So as you can see from that video, that gate could have actually been plugging the vessel, and that's why it wasn't bleeding. So now we've assessed our ABCs, and it's time to take this guy to the operating room to safely remove the gate. So let me get my friend over here to help me explain this. I call him Dr. Yoon. So Dr. Yoon's looking pretty lean here, and you can see we don't have all the muscles in the vessels so that I can demonstrate to you exactly how dangerous this could be. So the brachial vessels would be here, and they travel on the inside of the arm up beneath the collarbone. As they pass beneath the collarbone, they transition and they're called the subclavian artery and vein. So when this guy came in, he looked like this. He had this black metal rod sticking up right behind the collarbone. So as you can imagine, as trauma doctors, we were worried that he pierced right through both of these vessels. So we get this guy up to the OR and we get him all prepped and draped and ready to go. Now, this isn't your ordinary case where you can just lay a guy down on the operating table and go to work. So because the gate was under his arm, we actually had to bring 2 operating tables together so the gate could go in between and he could then lay down flat. So as you can imagine, there's like 5 residents in the room, the lead surgeon, and then the senior surgery residents. So we're all ready to go, and the attending surgeon pulls the gate out. And guess what? Nothing happened. So we're standing there and just waiting for blood to start pouring out of the wound. To our surprise, we could not believe that this metal bar missed every vital structure as it penetrated through his body. When he fell on that fence, that metal bar traversed outside of his rib cage along tissue planes. It went behind the collarbone, around all the nerves in those big blood vessels, and didn't so much as injure a thing. So fun fact, this was the very last trauma case I ever did as a trauma general surgery resident. Back to the patient. So we pull the gate out, we close him up, and we admit him to the hospital. We always keep patients like this just in case there's something we missed, or if he started bleeding or collapsed a lung overnight, we're there to help him. So the next morning, we're making our rounds and we check up on this guy, and he is totally fine. We get all of his discharge paper ready and we discharge him from the hospital, and he goes home and never comes back. So what you just witnessed is a medical miracle. That's a pretty crazy case with a lot of awesome anatomy, so I hope you guys learned something. So if you guys have any crazy trauma stories, or you know anyone who's had one, leave it in the comments below and maybe we'll feature it in our next video. But for now, Dr. Ricky, out.